No change just yet at 10 Downing Street as Theresa May refuses to resign. The British Prime Minister weathers another Brexit storm as she hits the campaign trail on the opening day of EU parliamentary elections. Some 600 million ballots are now being counted after the world's biggest election. Exit polls in India suggest Prime Minister Narendra Modi's coalition has won again, but the Congress party has rubbished those projections. And 40,000 police officers and soldiers are deployed across the Indonesian capital as protesters build barricades for a second consecutive day. Demonstrators are enraged by Joko Widodo's win in the presidential election. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. I'm Thomas Waterhouse. First for you this hour. The British pound hit a 4-month low against the dollar on Wednesday as Westminster was rocked by another tumultuous day over Brexit. Prime Minister Theresa May is refusing to throw in the towel, despite growing pressure from both her ruling Conservatives and her political rivals over her handling of the divorce from Brussels. But another cabinet member has quit office, saying that she has no faith in the Prime Minister's Brexit strategy. Selina Sykes explains.
Whispers and rumours in the corridors of Westminster on Wednesday suggested that Theresa May had finally run out of lives. For now, the British Prime Minister is clinging on to power amid calls for her to quit as anger mounts over her last-ditch attempt to break the Brexit deadlock.
If Parliament passes the bill before the summer recess, the UK will leave the EU by the end of July. Reject it, and all we have before us is division and deadlock.
A turbulent day in Parliament ended with a cabinet resignation, with Commons leader Andrea Leadsom saying she no longer believes that the government's approach will deliver Brexit.
I have been determined to deliver Brexit, and I'm just worried that this bill, with its new elements in it, would not do that. It's been a really tough day.
Should the Prime Minister go now? Should the Prime Minister go?
It's the 36th resignation by a minister under May. 21 of them have been over Brexit. On Tuesday, May announced that she would be asking MPs to back her EU divorce deal for the 4th time, proposing a new Brexit deal containing a number of concessions aiming to attract cross-party support, including a vote on holding a second referendum. A move that infuriated Brexiteers in her own Conservative Party and wasn't enough to sway the opposition, with Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn calling it a repackaged version of the same old deal. May's fate may be decided on Friday, when she is due to meet with the chairman of the 1922 Committee, an influential group of Tory backbenchers who have long been pressurising the Prime Minister to leave Number 10.
Well, Theresa May will be hoping to turn the page on that Brexit trauma as she heads out to drum up support on polling day this Thursday. Britain and the Netherlands are kicking off 4 days of voting in European parliamentary elections, but many in the UK feel they're absurdly picking lawmakers for a bloc that their country may very soon be leaving. Onke Ule explains.
2 extensions later, the increasingly divided United Kingdom's new deadline for leaving the European Union is fixed for October 31st. Since the British are still members of the European Union, they've been called to vote in parliamentary elections. If the UK is still a member of the EU on July 2nd, the date the new parliamentary session begins, the current composition of the legislative body, with 751 deputies, will stand. If a divorce deal is agreed upon before July 2nd, the number of MEPs will shrink to 705, with seats redistributed to the remaining member states to take into account the change in demographics. That means British voters will cast their ballot for a parliament that could look radically different in the coming months. And then there's the raft of questions that will linger until a hypothetical Brexit deal goes through. What political influence will Britain have in the European Parliament? Could anti-European hardliners like Nigel Farage form a strong enough coalition with other populist parties to sway the election of the next EU Commission president? The answers to these questions could have lasting repercussions for the entire bloc.
Next, calm can't descend on Tripoli until the militias which have infested the UN-backed government are removed. That's what Libya's Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar told Emmanuel Macron after talks on Wednesday. That's according to French presidential sources. Fighting for control of that city has intensified since early April, leaving over 500 people dead and forcing a further 75,000 from their homes. The Election Commission in India says that vote counting is now well underway after the country's multi-phased election. There might be 600 million ballots to tally, but we'll have a clearer idea of the outcome in just a few hours' time. 6 out of 7 exit polls predict that Narendra Modi's ruling coalition has secured an outright majority. Their main rivals from the Congress party have, though, rubbished those polls as being fake.
After 7 phases of voting in 29 states over 6 weeks, India is waiting to find out the results of its marathon election. With 900 million eligible voters, that's more than the populations of Europe and Australia combined. It's the largest democratic exercise the world has ever seen. Between the 11th of April and the 19th of May, voters went to the polls to elect 543 out of 545 members of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament, in 1 million polling stations managed by 11 million election officials. A vote that was largely peaceful, except for clashes that broke out earlier this month between rival political supporters in West Bengal, a key battleground state with the 3rd highest number of parliamentary seats. The vote was seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 5-year rule, during which he's been challenged on the country's high unemployment rates, a slowing economy, the plight of farmers and rising nationalism. The election had more than 8,000 candidates and 2,000 parties in the running. But the main competition was between Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party and the Congress Party, led by Rahul Gandhi, heir of the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty that has dominated Indian politics since the country's independence. A rivalry with a lot of bad blood that has seen tit-for-tat jibes throughout the campaign. According to exit polls, Modi and the National Democratic Alliance, the Prime Minister's allies in the ruling coalition government, are on track to win a 2nd term. But such predictions have been proved misleading before and have been dismissed by the Congress Party.
If you want to follow the latest from India as the results come in, my colleague Stuart Norval will have a special programme starting at 9:30 a.m. Paris time this Thursday, while Delana D'Souza will have more coverage from the capital, New Delhi. That's beginning at 4:35 p.m. Paris time here on France 24. Indonesia's president has promised to get tough on the orchestrators of violent protests in the capital. For a 2nd consecutive night on Wednesday, demonstrators clashed with police in Jakarta after election officials confirmed that Joko Widodo had won last month's presidential race. At least 6 people have been killed so far in this unrest and dozens more arrested.
The streets of Jakarta, alight with fireworks. But this is no celebration. For a 2nd straight night, protesters angry over the results of last month's presidential election clashed with security forces in a storm of tear gas, rubber bullets, rocks, and firecrackers. Indonesian President Joko Widodo called for calm, saying the military and police would act accordingly to stamp out the riots.
There are no choices for the Indonesian National Army or the police. They'll take firm action in accordance with the law.
The unrest followed an announcement on Tuesday by the General Election Commission confirming that President Joko Widodo had defeated his challenger, former General Prabowo Subianto. Prabowo rejected the results, alleging massive cheating and irregularities, despite the Electoral Commission and independent observers dismissing the claims. He called on his supporters and police to proceed peacefully.
I urge all parties, the people, the police and the military to stay calm and avoid any violence.
Protesters say they're not going anywhere. They accuse security forces of using live ammunition to disperse the crowd, a claim police deny. On Wednesday, police presented evidence they say proves protesters are being paid to come from outside the capital. Authorities say some 40,000 police and military personnel are on duty across Jakarta to maintain security. Access to social media has been restricted.
Next, promising to work for the interests of everyone and not just for the members of his party. Cyril Ramaphosa has been picked by lawmakers to be South Africa's new president. This following the victory of the ANC in this month's general election. He's vowed to give the country's economy a much-needed boost as well as create jobs. Let's listen now to what he had to say ahead of his official swearing-in ceremony on Saturday.
One language, collaboration, working together, building a beautiful country together. So tonight I sleep very peacefully, elated that the message that emanated from this parliament is one that the people of our country want to hear.
Moving on, plans have been drawn up here in Paris for a huge 54-acre garden stretching over the River Seine, with the capital's much-loved Eiffel Tower at the centre of this Arcadia. The architect who designed the Princess Diana Memorial Fountain in London has been picked to get green-fingered.
New York has Central Park, London has Hyde Park, and now Paris is about to get its own giant garden. The city has announced that American landscape architect Catherine Gustafson had won the bid to transform the area around the Eiffel Tower, turning over 50 hectares into the largest public green space in the city. A 1.6-kilometre-long strip of greenery that will connect the Place du Trocadéro to the Eiffel Tower and the Champ de Mars. In an interview to French daily Le Parisien, Gustafson said the project will allow pedestrians and cyclists to move around more freely.
I am horrified by the state of the premises, which are not adequately equipped to accommodate the flow of walkers and visitors. We must rethink the site entirely.
The new park will make the Iéna Bridge car-free, with only public transport and emergency vehicles allowed. It's the latest in a series of projects launched by Mayor Anne Hidalgo to make Paris more pedestrian and cyclist-friendly.
Paris, the city of the Paris Agreement on climate change, confirms its place as the international leader in environmental protection. In a city this dense, we need large breathing spaces.
Authorities say the transformation will be complete by 2023, in time for the 2024 Paris Olympics. It will cost an estimated €72 million.
And finally, an update from the Cannes Film Festival for you. The Canadian filmmaker Xavier Dolan is back on the French Riviera for the third time with his latest movie, Mathias et Maxime, a film in which he also stars. Laurent Berstecker takes a closer look at his career so far.
Competing for one of the highest awards in cinema for the third time. At only 30 years old and with 8 films under his belt, Xavier Dolan is already a familiar face on the Cannes Film Festival's red carpet. After a short career as a child actor, Dolan stepped behind the camera in 2009 for his first feature-length film, I Killed My Mother. A film which earned the then 19-year-old a rapturous standing ovation at the director's fortnight competition in Cannes, and which marked the start of a love story between the French festival and the Canadian wunderkind. A workaholic and a perfectionist, Dolan is known for acting in his own movies and for being involved in all aspects of his films, from the editing process to the soundtrack. He's directed nearly one film a year since his debut and has already won several honors, including Cannes' Jury Prize for Mommy in 2014 and the festival's Grand Prix Award for It's Just the End of the World in 2016. After shooting his first movie in English last year, Dolan went back to his French-Canadian roots with his latest work, Mathias et Maxime. The young director will now hope to add the highest award of all to his collection when the festival announces this year's Palme d'Or on May 25th.
That's all from me this hour. Do stay with us here on France 24. Our world news coverage continues.